Bright Falls, a small town swallowed by mist where the trees seem to whisper your name and the darkness watches from just beyond the light. It looks ordinary, even inviting, but something about it feels wrong. And then it happens. A flicker of movement in the corner of your eye. A shadow that shouldn't be there. A voice, yours, echoing back in a place you don't remember speaking. It's subtle, just enough to make your stomach drop. You've been here before. But here is the real question. Where? Not in Alan Wake. No, this goes further back, to another town, one that lures you in with cherry pie and damn fine coffee only to pull the ground out from under you. A place where the past refuses to stay buried and reality bends like static on a broken TV. A place called Twin Peaks. At first glance, the similarities between Alan Wake and Twin Peaks might seem like surface details, quirky townsfolk, eerie forests, an outsider unraveling a mystery that refuses to make sense. But that's just the bait. Twin Peaks doesn't simply influence Alan Wake, it haunts it. Its presence seeps into its very DNA, twisting the story, bending reality, and trapping both its characters and audience in a spiral where every answer only deepens the mystery. So how deep does this connection go? And more importantly, what does it reveal about the way stories shape us?
This story is a monster, and monsters wear many faces.
Hey everyone, Carol here, and today we are diving into two of my all-time favorites, Twin Peaks and Alan Wake. So grab your flashlight, sip some damn fine coffee, and step into the darkness with me. Before we dive in, here's a quick rundown for anyone unfamiliar with one or both of these stories. What is Twin Peaks? A small town murder mystery with a surreal edge. FBI agent Dade Cooper arrives in Twin Peaks to investigate the death of Laura Palmer, but as he digs deeper, the case twists into something far more mysterious and far more dangerous. What is Alan Wake? A psychological horror story about a writer whose fiction becomes reality. When Alan Wake's wife disappears in the small town of Bright Falls, he stumbles upon pages of a novel he doesn't remember writing, one that seems to be controlling his fate. Now that we've set the stage, let's dive in. And just a heads up, spoilers ahead. If you haven't watched Twin Peaks or played the Alan Wake games, now it's our chance to turn back. Or stay and see how deep this story really goes. Some game studios make great games, but Remedy, they create experiences, games that pull you in, twist your mind, and refuse to let go. You don't just play their stories, you fall into them. And at the center of it all, Sam Lake, a man whose creative vision doesn't just shape Remedy's games, it bleeds into them. And you can feel it. Every time you step into a Remedy game, something is different. The atmosphere, the pacing, the way reality feels like it could crack open at any moment. It's deliberate. Watch any Sam Lake interview and it's obvious he's not following trends, he's not playing it safe. He's infusing these stories with his own passion, bending structure, breaking rules, taking risks.
In horror stories, we only have victims and monsters.
I mean, just look at Sam's Max Payne face. If that's not dedication, I don't know what it is. And speaking of risks, Remedy thrives on them, something increasingly rare in today's industry. When telling their stories, they mess with the very nature of storytelling itself. Control shatter our perception of reality. Quantum Break turns time into a puzzle. But Alan Wake went further, making storytelling a fundamental part of the game. Then comes Alan Wake 2, and just when you think you have seen everything, they drop Whithin, a full-blown musical sequence in a survival horror game. Okay, let that sink in. A musical number in a psychological horror game? That's not just a risk, that's Remedy staring to the abyss of creative insanity and saying, let's dance. And they did. According to Sam Lake, that entire chapter was nearly scrapped. And honestly, that would have been a crime, because somehow, against all logic, it works. It's surreal, it's bizarre, it's unforgettable. And let's be real, some lake on the dance floor, the guy writes noir, survives the dark place and still grooves like it's Max Payne's Saturday Night Fever. Absolute legend. And what's your take on Whithin? Did it blow your mind or leave you completely baffled? Let me know in the comments. This is why Remedy stands out. They dare to be different. They embrace the weird, the bold, the unexpected. And that same fearless creativity isn't just at the heart of their games, it's in their characters too. What makes Alan Wake so special, ironically, is the fact that Alan Wake, the character, isn't special at all. He's not a superhero, he doesn't have superpowers, he's not some chosen one destined to save the world. He's just a man, a writer struggling with self-doubt, a failing marriage, and a mind that feels like it's turning against him. He's stubborn, short-tempered, often his own worst enemy. In short, he's human. And that's exactly why we connect with him. Because at some point, we've all been there. Stuck in our own heads, wrestling with fears we can't quite name, feeling like we're fighting against forces we don't understand. Alan Wake works because Alan's story isn't only about fighting supernatural horrors, it's about battling yourself. He isn't some action hero effortlessly cutting through waves of enemies. His main gun, a flashlight, a fragile beam of light against overwhelming darkness, a symbol of hope, but a fragile one, flickering, unsteady, barely holding back the void. And really, isn't that what feels like sometimes? Like you're standing alone in the night, armed with nothing but a flicker of hope, desperately trying to push back the shadows? That's what makes Alan Wake powerful. It goes beyond survival horror. It's psychological horror, existential horror. It taps into something deeply personal. Alan isn't just trying to survive, he's trying to take back control of his own narrative, because like all of us, he's the one trying to write his future. Or, as Sam Lake puts it, whether it's writer's block or some other crisis in your life, it really doesn't matter where you go or don't go, because that old log cabin is your head, and the dark waters of the lake that surrounds it are the depths of your subconscious mind. The demons that surface from the lake will come knocking, and the only way to banish them is to face them and shine a light on them. And that's the essence of Alan Wake. You can't outrun the darkness. You have to face it. Some stories entertain, others challenge, and then there are the ones that rewrite the rules entirely. That's Twin Peaks. When David Lynch and Mark Frost introduced Twin Peaks to the world in 1990, television had never seen anything like it. On the surface, it looked like a classic small-town mystery. A sleepy town in Washington, a murdered prom queen, an eccentric FBI agent with an obsession for cherry pie and damn fine coffee.
This must be where pies go when they die.
It had all the makings of a traditional murder mystery, until suddenly it didn't. Because Twin Peaks was never about solving a crime, it was about stepping into a dream, one where reality warps, time fractures, and darkness seeps through the cracks of an otherwise picturesque world. But what made it so unsettling? It wasn't just the supernatural horrors, it wasn't just the cryptic whispers of the figures lurking in red curtained rooms. It was the feeling that something was deeply, fundamentally wrong, even when nothing terrifying was happening. A simple conversation, a lingering glance, a moment held for just a little too long. Lynch and Frost knew that the true unease doesn't come from what you see, but from what you feel lurking beneath the surface. And, like any groundbreaking work, Twin Peaks had its battles. The second season, rushed by network pressure, disrupted by creative disputes, and missing Lynch's full influence, faltered after prematurely revealing Laura Palmer's killer. For a moment, it seemed like the spell had broken, but even at its weakest, the show refused to be forgotten. Then came Twin Peaks' Fire Walk With Me, a prequel that did more than answer questions. It burned them down and left something even more disturbing in their place. And when Twin Peaks: The Return arrived, it didn't continue the story the way anyone expected. It shattered expectations all over again. Because Twin Peaks isn't a show you simply watch, it's something you experience. The uncanny dream logic, the blurred lines between reality and nightmare, the characters who felt like real people yet spoke and moved like ghosts from another world. Lynch and Frost created something far bigger than a cult classic. They redefined what storytelling could be. And Alan Wake. Its connection to Twin Peaks went beyond the inspiration. It fell under its spell and never escaped. It's no secret that Twin Peaks left its mark on Alan Wake, but the connection cuts far deeper than quirky townsfolk and eerie forest backdrop. It's in the places, the people, in the way the woods feel like they are watching you, in the way both stories play with reality itself, in how the world feels familiar, yet wrong. The Old Deer Diner mirrors the Double Wire Diner, both small town hubs where warmth and routine mask an unsettling undercurrent. Rose Marigold idolizes Alan, much like Shelley Johnson clings to the wrong people, both trapped in their own fantasies. Then there are the lodges, the Great Northern Hotel and Cauldron Lake Lodge, both places of retreat where reality bends and the people inside aren't as in control as they think. Even Bright Falls itself feels like a reflection of Twin Peaks, with Mirror Peak standing as its haunting namesake. And the FBI agents, Dale Cooper and Robert Nightingale, couldn't be further apart. One is open to the unknown, the other fights against it, and both pay the price. At first, Alan Wake seems grounded, a missing person, a struggling writer, a town where everyone seems just a little off. It mirrors Twin Peaks' first season. What starts as a small town mystery slowly unravels, paranoia thickening with each step deeper into the dark. Bright Falls, much like Twin Peaks, hides its horrors beneath warm smiles and postcard scenery. But the deeper you go, the more the cracks appear. Then comes Alan Wake 2 and everything fractures. If the first game borrowed from Twin Peaks' haunting mystery and supernatural horror, its sequel fully embraced the chaotic, fragmented dream logic of Twin Peaks: The Return. And here's where things get unsettling. Lynch's third season didn't simply bend storytelling, it shattered it. Time loops, identity shifts, conversations that feel like echoes from a place you were never meant to visit. Alan Wake 2 follows this same philosophy, daring you to assemble meaning from something that keeps slipping through your fingers. Reality doesn't just distort, it turns against you. Perspectives shift, timelines crack, what once seemed clear is now a mess of broken reflections. You are left trying to piece it together, knowing it might never fully make sense. And that's where Twin Peaks and Alan Wake cease to be two stories. They become one and the same. Because at some point, the dream stops feeling separate from reality. It consumes it. Lynch's Red Room sequences are the perfect example of this dream logic. A space where time collapses, language distorts, and nothing behaves the way it should. But this isn't weirdness for the sake of weirdness. It's something deeper, a manifestation of fear, trauma, and the subconscious battles we are too afraid to face. And that's the real truth behind Twin Peaks and Alan Wake. Neither story is really about a murder or a writer trapped in the dark. Both pull their protagonists into something much bigger, a descent into their own minds, their own fears, their own truths. And for Cooper, the case becomes personal, forcing him to confront his own darkness. For Alan, his writing warps around him, blurring the line between nightmare and authorship until he no longer knows which side of the page he is on. And, just like Twin Peaks: The Return, Alan Wake 2 isn't something you simply play or watch. It's something you experience. It demands more than your attention. It pulls you under until you are not entirely sure where you stand anymore. Because Twin Peaks and Alan Wake aren't about the nightmares themselves. They're about what happens when you wake up and realize the dream never really ended. What if the act of storytelling isn't about creating reality, but about becoming trapped by it? One of the most chilling connections between Twin Peaks and Alan Wake lies in their shared obsession with storytelling as a power that shapes, bends, and ultimately imprisons those who attempt to control it. Think about this. What if rewriting your past doesn't free you, but only tightens the loop? In Twin Peaks: The Return, Agent Cooper believes he can change Laura Palmer's fate. He travels back to the night of her murder, leading her away from danger, seemingly rewriting history itself. And for a brief moment, it appears he succeeded, until Laura suddenly vanishes, torn away by an unseen force. When Cooper returns to the present, hoping for redemption, he finds himself trapped in an unfamiliar reality, a distorted timeline where Laura never existed as he remembered. His attempt to fix the past fractures reality further, leaving him lost in an endless spiral. Well, sound familiar?
It's not a loop. It's a spiral.
Alan Wake faces the same relentless nightmare. Locked within the dark place, he desperately writes and rewrites his story, believing he can shape his fate by controlling the narrative. But every revision only deepens his imprisonment. The dark place twists his own words against him, forcing Alan into new versions of the same nightmare. The harder he tries to impose order, the more chaotic and uncontrollable his reality becomes, mirroring Lynch's idea that the past is not a fixed point, but something malleable, deceptive, and ultimately beyond control. Both Twin Peaks and Alan Wake leave us with the haunting question: do we shape reality, or does reality shape us? Lynch and Remedy explore an unsettling truth. Stories may be alive. They resist being rewritten, twist back onto themselves, and sometimes devour the very creators who dare bring them to life. Cooper's journey is an endless hunt, chasing answers that only lead deeper into the darkness. Alan Wake is equally trapped, rewriting the same nightmare in hope of escape. Yet, each revision merely brings him closer to a chilling realization. He isn't the author of his fate, he's a character in a story that keeps rewriting itself. His words hold power, but not control. Every sentence, every rewrite, every desperate attempt to reshape his reality only reinforces the prison around him. He isn't scripting his way out, he's sinking deeper into a narrative that refuses to let him go.
I'm never getting out of here, am I?
Yes, you will. And no, you won't. And that is by your own choice.
Twin Peaks: The Return embodies this idea through fractured timelines, shifting identities, and looping narratives. Cooper exists in multiple versions of himself. Laura is both present and absent, and characters find themselves trapped in cycles they can't escape, reliving echoes of past choices haunted by events they can't change. Alan Wake 2 drives this unsettling concept to even more disturbing extremes. Alan's struggle isn't just psychological, it's literal. His reality is a script, and every attempt to rewrite his way out only pulls him deeper. The dark place doesn't just resist his edits, it distorts them, forcing him into endless loops where escape is nothing more than an illusion. As Alan Wake himself puts it,
The unanswered mystery is what stays with us the longest, and it's what we'll remember in the end.
Much like Cooper's doomed attempt to save Laura, Alan's rewrites never grant him true freedom. Instead, Each new draft is another layer of the prison. Some stories refuse closure. Some mysteries were never meant to be solved. And the past, no matter how much we try to alter it, will always find a way to haunt us. If there is one theme that Twin Peaks and Alan Wake obsess over, it's duality. The war between light and shadow, self and other, control and chaos. Both stories dive headfirst into a terrifying idea. The greatest threat isn't lurking in the dark, it's already inside you. Nowhere is this clear than in Twin Peaks The Return, where identity itself fractures. Agent Cooper, once a beacon of intuition and integrity, is split into two opposing forces, his virtual self and his sinister doppelganger. Mr. C, a cold, ruthless figure driven by violence and unchecked ambition. But this isn't a simple battle of good versus evil. It's something deeper, a soul divided. One half chasing justice, the other embracing destruction. Two versions of the same man, each believing they are real. And like Cooper, Alan Wake has his own shadow to face, Mr. Scratch.
Hello, Internet. You people have been talking about me.
First introduced in American Nightmare and returning in Alan Wake 2, Scratch isn't just Alan's dark reflection, he is his worst fears made flesh. Scratch isn't simply hunting Alan, he is replacing him, wearing his face, mocking him, whispering that no matter how hard Alan fights, the darkness is always waiting. Because sometimes your worst enemy isn't the monster in the woods, it's the part of you you can't control. But this theme of duality runs deeper than just evil twins and doppelgangers. It seeps into the very worlds where these stories unfold. From a Jungian perspective, Twin Peaks and Alan Wake unfold like a descent into the collective unconscious. The Black Lodge, the White Lodge, and the Dark Place are more than supernatural locations. They are symbolic landscapes of the mind, manifestations of the battle between light and darkness within the self. They don't just exist in the world of the story. They exist inside the characters themselves, shaping their fears, their struggles, their inevitable confrontation with their darkest truths. Lynch masterfully plays with this in The Return, distorting the boundaries between who a character appears to be, who they truly are, and who they believe themselves to be. This resonates deeply in Alan Wake 2, where Alan's battle isn't merely about escaping the dark place, it's about unraveling his own identity. The stories he writes, the versions of himself he constructs, they are unstable, unreliable, constantly shifting. His mind is a shattered mirror, and every piece reflects a different truth. But something even more terrifying lurks beneath these fractured identities. The forces pulling the strings, the ones that go beyond personal demons, beyond individual psychology, into something more elemental. Figures like Judy, Bob, and the Dark Presence are more than villains. They are primordial forces, archetypes of chaos, suffering, and corruption embedded deep in the human experience. Judy thrives on pain, bending reality, feeding on trauma and despair. Bob is pure unfiltered malevolence, a force of hunger, violence, and destruction. The Dark Presence takes Alan's fears, his creative struggles, his self-doubt, and turns them against him, warping reality into a waking nightmare. These entities blur the line between internal conflict and external horror, transforming deeply personal struggles into tangible living threats. And that's what makes Twin Peaks and Alan Wake so compelling. Their supernatural forces aren't just monsters to defeat, they're pieces of the self, waiting to be confronted. Because in the end, these stories aren't about battling external horrors. They're about facing the darkness within and deciding which version of yourself will make it out alive. And if all of this sounds like something straight out of Jungian psychology, well, that's because it is. There is a whole discussion to be had about the Jungian influences on Twin Peaks and Alan Wake. And don't worry, we'll be diving into that in a future video. One of the most striking elements of Twin Peaks is how effortlessly it balances two opposing forces, quirky offbeat humor and deeply unsettling horror. At first, the series feels almost playful, filled with eccentric characters, oddball dialogue, and dreamlike absurdity. But beneath the surface, something much darker lurks. And that's exactly what makes it so unnerving. The same contrast pulses at the heart of Alan Wake. Remedy masterfully blends absurdity with fear, using moments of levity to disarm you, right before plunging you into darkness. Twin Peaks and Alan Wake share this unsettling duality because sometimes the scariest things happen right after you let your guard down. Take Twin Peaks Log Lady, a strange woman who carries a wooden log and claims it speaks to her. On the surface, she seems bizarre, even laughable, but as the series unfolds, her cryptic message reveals terrifying truths hidden beneath the absurdity. Alan Wake mirrors this with Cynthia Weaver, the lantern-carrying woman obsessed with the dark. At first, she seems like just another eccentric resident of Bright Falls. But as the story progresses, her paranoia is proven justified. Like the Log Lady, she isn't crazy, she just knows what others refuse to believe. Then there is the completely absurd. Twin Peaks is filled with weird, offbeat characters. Nadine Hurley and her obsession with silent drape runners, Agent Cooper's deep love for coffee, the chaotic antics of the town's more peculiar residents.
Dig yourself out of the shit. $29.99.
The show draws you into an oddball rhythm, make you laugh at the sheer strangeness of it all. Then, without warning, it pulls the floor out from under you. Blood-red curtains, distorted voices, shadowy figures watching from the darkness. The switch happens so suddenly that it feels unnatural, inescapable, like the world itself has turned against you. Ramen understands this trick perfectly. Alan Wake throws in the comedic chaos of Barry Wheeler, Alan's fast-talking, over-the-top literary agent. He crashes into scenes with ridiculous confidence, making horror feel lighthearted, if only for a moment. And in Alan Wake 2, the Koskela brothers take absurdity to another level. Their low-budget TV ads packed with crude humor and nonsensical energy make you laugh, but something about them feels wrong. Lynch uses the same technique, humor that doesn't just break tension but makes the world feel off-kilter, as if something unseen is pulling the strings. But why does this balance work so well? Because laughter is a false sense of security. When you're laughing, you feel safe, you drop your guard, and that's when horror hits the hardest. This is why Twin Peaks and Alan Wake linger in your mind. The horror isn't just about shadows and monsters, it's about instability, the creeping feeling that the world doesn't follow the rules you thought it did. The absurd and the terrifying aren't separate, they feed into each other. Lynch perfected this contrast. He makes you laugh at something ridiculous and in the very next moment he rips reality apart. 1 minute Twin Peaks is a cozy small town mystery. The next you are in the Black Lodge trapped with whispering doppelgangers unable to tell dream from nightmare. Remedy follows the same approach. 1 moment, Alan is arguing with Barry over something absurd. The next, he's alone in the woods, flashlight flickering, something moving just out of sight. The humor in Twin Peaks and Alan Wake doesn't soften the horror. It makes it worse. It tricks you into comfort before shattering the illusion. Because in their world, you are never truly safe. You just think you are, until the shadows remind you otherwise. And sometimes it isn't the shadows that warn you, it's the music. Much like Twin Peaks, Alan Wake uses music for more than atmosphere. It integrates it into the core of its world. David Lynch's collaboration with Angelo Badalamenti was instrumental in shaping the haunting, dreamlike tone of Twin Peaks. Their process was unlike anything in traditional scoring. Lynch wouldn't just request music, he would describe scenes in vivid emotional detail, painting pictures with words while Badalamenti translated them into sound. This organic approach led to the creation of Laura Palmer's theme in just 20 minutes, a piece that perfectly captures the show's balance of melancholic beauty and impending dread. Music in Twin Peaks goes beyond ambience. It dictates emotion, distorts reality, and even acts as an omen. Some of the show's most unsettling moments happen not because of what we see, but because of what we hear. A sudden shifting melody, a ghostly droning in the background, or an unnatural silence that lingers too long. And then there is Twin Peaks: The Return, where sound itself becomes an active force. Characters hear strange frequencies, certain music cues distort time, and reality bends under the weight of sound. Lynch goes beyond using music. He weaponizes it. Remedy takes this to the next level. In Alan Wake, music isn't just something you hear. It's something that reshapes the world around you.
The only rule that we had was the lyrics need to be about the story.
The Old Gods of Asgard, a fictional in-game band, aren't just musicians, they are mythmakers. Their songs hold hidden messages about Alan's fate, acting as prophecy, revelation, and even a weapon against the darkness. But here is the twist. The Old Gods of Asgard are real. They are actually Poets of the Fall, a band that Remedy has collaborated with across multiple games. Tracks like The Poet and the Muse and Children of the Elder God aren't just flavor, they are integral to Alan's survival. And then there is Alan Wake 2 Whithin, the nightmarish reality warping musical sequence we mentioned earlier. It's a surreal horror set piece that feels like something straight out of a Lynchian fever dream. Remedy doesn't just let you listen to music, they pull you into it, making you feel it in ways that distort reality. Beyond the Old Gods of Asgard, the Alan Wake series carefully selects every track to enhance its atmosphere. From the strange folk sounds of Roy Orbison's In Dreams to the melancholic weight of Nick Cave's Up Jump the Devil, every song feels deliberate, imprinted onto the game's reality like a hidden message waiting to be uncovered. Petri Alancon's haunting score deepens the experience, building unsettling soundscapes and a pulse of dread into both games. In Alan Wake 2, Poe's This Road lingers throughout Alan's journey, its lyrics echoing his descent into the dark place. Another reminder that in this world, even the music is trying to tell you something. More than a soundtrack, music in Twin Peaks and Alan Wake is a force, a doorway into the unknown. Twin Peaks didn't only change television, it rewrote the rules of storytelling. It blurred the line between dreams and reality, wrapped psychological horror in small-town charm, and proved that the most unsettling mysteries aren't just about answers, but about the unseen forces lurking beneath the surface. Its influence extends beyond the screen, pushing creators to rethink narrative, structure, and reality itself. And Alan Wake, it's more than a love letter to Twin Peaks. It carries the same small-town intrigue, surreal horror, and psychological depth that make Lynch and Frost's creation unforgettable. Remedy didn't just take inspiration from Twin Peaks, they infused its DNA into the very fabric of Alan's journey. They didn't just craft a horror story, they created something that remains, a mystery waiting to be unraveled. Because at their core, Twin Peaks and Alan Wake remind us of one terrifying truth. The scariest stories reveal more than monsters, they reveal us. And in the end, the real horror isn't in the shadows, it's in what they reveal. Well, I'm not Isabella Rossellini and I won't be wearing a blue velvet dress at the Oscars, but consider this my homage to David Lynch. His vision shaped these worlds, and his influence echoes in every shadow, every flickering light, every unanswered question. Whatever he is now, I hope the next dimension is just as strange and full of mystery as the ones he created.
There's the donut and there's the hole, and you should keep your eye on the donut. And all the other things that go on, they don't matter. What matters is falling in love with the story or ideas and realizing those.
So now I have to ask, what's your favorite unanswered mystery in Alan Wake or Twin Peaks? Which question keeps you up at night? Drop your crazy theories in the comments. I want to hear them. And if you're still here, that means that you must really love deep dives into storytelling. So don't forget to like and subscribe. There are plenty more waiting in the dark. And, as always,
the owls are not what they seem.